Yes, we will need to remember, I think, to click start recording.
Doesn't matter. I can do it. It's not a problem. But see,
Right.
Jess, do you see right now it
Yeah,
says
start it again.
okay.
Right.
All right, everyone ready?
Ready.
Okay. Well, we don't have to launch it because it's already open. So there are a few people here. All right, so I will just start out by saying good afternoon, everybody. I apologize. We launched a little bit early in our excitement to talk to you all. So you might have seen us sitting here for a little bit if you signed in a little bit early. Anyway, welcome to today's Community of Practice webinar hosted by the Leadership Development Group. It is entitled What's New with Us and Coaching for Executive Presence. We will begin momentarily, just a few quick notes while we wait for a few more people to join the call. All attendees have entered the webinar on mute. However, we welcome your questions and comments. So while you're on mute, feel free to enter them into the questions box on the GoToWebinar control panel on your screen. We will take time during and at the end of the webinar to address them. Lastly, we will be recording this session. The recording and presentation will be made available to all attendees. Okay, so we have a pretty good group here so far, so I guess we will start. Again, thank you for joining us today for the Community of Practice. For those of you who haven't experienced a Community of Practice, allow me to just provide a quick explanation of what we do. We envision these sessions as an opportunity for our active and potential faculty to come together for updates on TLD Group and how best to work with us, as well as to dive into specific topics of interest presented by our well-qualified faculty members. Today, as mentioned, we will be updating you on what's new with us and unveiling our new and improved faculty intake form and matching process. Followed by a presentation by TLD Group coach and consultant Jeanne Rice on coaching for executive presence. So we have a lot to cover. So here is our agenda for the next hour and 15 minutes. We're going to start out with what's new with us, and we are going to introduce a new member of our staff, Madison Smiley. We're going over the roles within TLD Group because we've restructured a little bit. We're going to discuss the AP submission updates, and we are then going to dive in with Jess leading this discussion on the faculty intake form, updates and the matching process. And then finally, we'll turn it over to Jeanne Rice for coaching for executive presence. So it's a full day. Next. So this is your team, and I'm sure you've seen some version of our faces either in our emails or, we've had phone conversations with you all. So Tracy Duberman is our fearless leader, and she is president and CEO. And we thought it would be helpful for us to not only give you our titles, but to also just outline what it is that we're responsible for within the company high level. So Tracy is responsible for setting the strategic direction and, just really setting our mission, vision, values, and goals. Developing the team to execute strategy and new business development. Then we have Tara Satlow, who is our SVP of Client Solutions. She also serves as the Client Relationship Manager for coaching and consulting for a certain sector of our clients. Her partner in crime is Rosemary Blozier, and she is VP of Client Solutions. She is the CRM for coaching and consulting as well. She handles a different set of clients. We have Amy Reamer, who's not on the call, but she is a big part of our company, and she is the VP of Public Relations, obviously handling that. Then you have me. I am the Director of Coaching Operations. I'm responsible for faculty onboarding. I am the project manager for coaching for the coaching practice, and I handle behind the scenes operations. We have Jess Molson, who is our Chief of Staff, which is a new position, and she is in charge of new business development, new product development, and all of our marketing. So very important. And we have, and I'm very happy to introduce Madison Smiley, who is our project manager, and she is the project manager for the consulting side. Madison, I just want to give you a moment to introduce yourself and say a few words.
Hey everyone, my name is Madison Smiley. I joined TLD Group at the end of December, late last year, and have been here about 5 months. I am currently a student in biopsychology at Minnesota State University, where I just wrapped up my first year. So great to meet you all and connect with you all, and look forward to working with you in the future.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Madison. All right, so next slide, we are just going to dive in real quick to the AP submission process. Yeah, the team members can sign off the video if you want to. So the AP submission process, we have upgraded our submission process because we are growing, which is a good thing, and we don't want things to, fall between the cracks. So we have created an address where you can send your invoices directly. All invoices are supposed to be submitted to ap@tldgroupinc.com, and they will be acknowledged when received. We do ask, because not everybody has done this in the past, we do ask that you include the client name, the company, and the coachee where appropriate, as well as the project number, which is located on your statement of work that you receive when you start an engagement. Additionally, invoices, as you know, and as is stated on your statement of work, are paid upon receipt of payment from the client. We have payment terms with our clients which range from 45 to 60 days. Lastly, please be sure to include and provide your EIN for our records. For accounting purposes, we will be paying companies going forward where appropriate. Unless you're a sole proprietor and you don't have an EIN and it's just your social security number on your W-9, we will be paying the company names going forward. So if there is an issue with that, please do let us know by sending an email to ap@tldgroupinc.com. I think that is it. I think next I'm going to turn it over to Jess, and she's going to talk about the faculty intake form. Jess?
Great. Thank you, Lisa. All right. So TLD Group has updated its faculty intake form. What is the faculty intake form? It's a web-based form that's filled out by coaches, consultants, and OD practitioners that would like to be considered for opportunities at TLD Group. We launched version 1 of this form in 2019, so many of you may already be familiar with it and have filled it out in the past. We recently made updates to the structure of this form for 2022 to better reflect the types of requests we're currently receiving from clients. The good news is that if you filled out this form in the past, your responses will still be in our system and should auto-populate for you when you open up this new version of the form. If you have completed it in the past, we are asking that you still complete it again, as there's new options and questions that have been added. Some changes you can expect to see with this version. There's now a place to enter information about sectors and departments that you've worked in, internally to organizations in the past. There are questions about your openness to in-person versus virtual work. As people are going back to the office, we're seeing like a rise in the request for work to be completed in person, as well as some faculty members who maybe aren't comfortable going back in person or can't right now for some reason. So we are looking to collect information on that at this time. In addition, we've added some timely speaking and coaching topics, such as employee health and well-being, resilience, leading hybrid and virtual teams, etc. So why fill out TLD Group's faculty form? As TLD Group continues to grow and scale our business, we need to also scale and improve the ways in which we connect our clients with best match faculty. When we were smaller, this process took place via discussion within our core team, but as we've grown, we have different CRMs managing different clients, different team members have met and been introduced to different faculty members, and client expectations are rising, both in terms of the speed at which they expect us to respond and the specificity of their requests. Okay, so how does TLD Group use the faculty form? So within our CRM tool, which is HubSpot, we build lists using checklist criteria on the faculty form. For example, we might build a list of faculty from Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin who have experience in team development and are open to in-person work and are trained in the Lencioni model. You'll notice in the faculty form itself that there are some open-ended questions on the form where we will ask for a sentence or two on your philosophy and approach to a certain TLD group solution. We do not use this information when we are forming the lists. However, we do use it, say our search for someone with expertise in Lencioni gives us a list of 20 names. We might use that philosophy and approach to help make a best match between the client culture and approach and expectations and the faculty members. Secondarily, we also use the faculty form to help us proactively identify gaps within our existing faculty. For example, we might find that we have a low number of action learning practitioners in comparison to what we have in our sales pipeline. So this just prompts us to be more proactive in our recruitment, reaching out for referrals from existing cadre members, et cetera, in areas where we might need to grow our faculty. So timeline, you will be receiving a link to the new form shortly after today's presentation, and will receive periodic reminder emails to complete this form. If you decide you'd like to opt out of future opportunities at TLD Group, there will be an option provided for that as well. We are moving slowly towards using this exclusively as our process for matching faculty to opportunities, and we do hope to be transitioned fully by the end of this year. So please be sure to fill out this form in a timely manner. We're considering this at this time to be a soft launch, meaning that we're launching to a smaller subset of people, specifically you guys who decided to join us today. So if you are struggling with filling out the form, having a negative user experience, we are open to feedback. Reach out to me. We're happy to make adjustments and changes. I do ask that you keep in mind, I'm a millennial, not a magician. My degrees are in philosophy and IO psychology. I'm tech savvy, but I'm certainly not the Michael Jordan of form building. I will always do my best to create a positive experience for you guys, but not everything is always kind of within my wheelhouse. When we built this form, the options that we chose for coaching topics, for speaking topics, for assessment tools, etc., were based around the requests we often hear from clients. We're happy to add assessments and topics here and there as needed, but we are trying to keep the number of options manageable, both for your benefit and for ours. Moving forward, at TLD Group, we're committed to reviewing this form annually and adjusting to reflect any current industry trends. You can also expect to receive an email from us annually asking you to update your information on file. That said, there's no need to wait until the 12-month mark to make updates to your form. You can access this through our website anytime on the Join Our Team page. When you scroll down on that page, it'll say, already a member of TLD Group's faculty, and there's a link there to update your information. So if you get certified in a new assessment tool, if you previously didn't want to travel for work but have changed your mind, you can go into that page anytime and update the information you have on file with us. All right, so I'm just quickly going to take you through an example of how we source here at TLD Group. So I have this scenario here. So Tara and Maddie recently finished up an organizational priorities assessment for a health system client and will be launching a custom designed physician leadership academy. They're looking for a faculty member to design and lead an interactive session for 30 physician leaders on change management. The client expressed a preference for speakers who have on-the-ground experience working within a hospital and a heavily interactive presentation style. So on our end, what this would look like is the building of a list. So we'd be looking for someone whose provider experience is any of internal employee And designing and delivering learning session topics is any of change management. They're open to in-person work within local travel or long distance travel. Alternatively, we might also look at people who hold a MD credential, can design and deliver learning sessions on change management, and are open to in-person work. So once that list is produced, to help us further cull down the best match faculty, we would look at those philosophies and approaches. And I pulled a few right out of our database that I think, based on this sample, might be a good fit. You can see they all kind of mention a highly interactive style, moving around the room, getting people talking to one another, and using kind of the existing knowledge that within the system. So we don't have a ton of time for questions on the faculty forum today, but if you do have them, feel free to submit them and we will respond. We're going to collect them and respond back to you guys in writing. So feel free to submit any questions that you have. If you think of something later, feel free to email me. It's jmolson@tldgroupinc.com. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who will be introducing our TLD Group faculty presenter.
You're on mute, Lisa.
I am. Okay, thank you, Jess. All right, so I am happy to introduce Jeanne Rice, who will be taking us through her presentation momentarily. Jeanne has been a coach for 20 years, specializing in leadership communication, presentation skills, and executive presence. She has a Master's of Science in Journalism from Northwest University, and she credits her expertise in communication to her first job as an investor relations manager in the financial services industry, and then her work at CNN, where she was a field producer in the business news division. Jeanne received her certification 5 years ago for the Bates Executive Presence Index, which she will be talking about today. It is a 360-degree style assessment tool, and I'm going to turn it over to her now so that she can take us through it. All right, Jeanne, on to you.
Thank you, Lisa. We will try and make this slide transition as smooth as possible. Lisa, do you have to switch that over to me? There we go. Could someone just give me a confirmation that you are seeing it at this point?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Great, thank you. I guess we managed that as smoothly as we could. Hello, everybody. I am delighted to be here, and thank you to everyone at TLD Group for giving me this opportunity. In the past, I have found executive presence pretty challenging to coach because it really means something different to everybody. So I am delighted to have this opportunity to share with you some of the information that I have come across over the last couple of years that has helped me in coaching my clients, and I'm hoping to share it with you to make it easier to coach your clients around this. As I run through it, I truly invite you to ask questions. I don't know if you can unmute yourselves, but you can use the chat box or even the question box. I think we're going to be monitoring both of those. If any of you happen to be already certified by Bates, please keep me honest. And if I say anything that you have a different take on, let me know, and we will certainly address that. I have 2 items on our agenda for the short time that we have together today. The first is just to take a look at what is executive presence after all, why it's important to our clients, and then based on the time that I've been working with the Bates Executive Presence Assessment Tool, the index, I've just identified a couple of common needs, and I'll share some quick tips with you that I use with my clients that maybe you could even share with yours. I'd like to invite all of you to, at this moment, get in your head a picture of somebody that you think exudes executive presence. Who, it could be somebody you work with, it could be someone you know personally, it could just be somebody from the public arena. So get in your mind somebody that has great executive presence, and then please go into chat and give me a couple of words that you would use to describe that person. What gives them executive presence?
Please post your answers in the questions box. Thanks.
And Lisa, I'm not sure I have access to that questions box, so if you could just, if anybody chimes in, share a few of those with me.
Definitely will.
Thank you. So how would you describe that person?
Okay, so far we have confidence, quiet authority, composure, cool, calm, and collected presence, self-confident, confidence, ease when conversing, calm demeanor, listener, commands the room, carries themselves with confidence, others listen to, good listener, charisma, knowledgeable.
Okay.
And mature is the last one we'll take right now.
And I'm sure that they would keep coming the longer we stayed on. Here are some others that I've heard. Some of these mimic what you have just shared. All of this to say, it's why executive presence is hard to coach to, because everything that you shared is executive presence. It is whatever somebody deems it to mean. So how do we really coach to this? That's what I wanted to find out. I work, if I didn't mention this already, I'm based in New Jersey. So it's the pharmaceutical capital of the world, I think. But I work with a lot of scientists, people with MDs. I work with a lot of engineers. I work with a lot of people who really think of executive presence as being soft skills, very soft skills. I'm going to say about 6 or 7 years ago, executive presence had a moment. It was just everybody wanted to be coached on executive presence, or everybody thought everybody else needed executive presence coaching. So as I was working with these analytically minded clients, and they'd be told that they needed executive presence coaching, they weren't buying it. It was really hard to get their buy-in. So I started doing some research of my own, thinking somebody must have some data around this. Sure enough, I came upon Bates, which at the time was a communication company based in Boston, and they've since merged with BTS, so they're quite large now. And what they did a very intensive study. It was about 3 years, hundreds of people participated, all walks of adult learning, psychology, all types of areas. And they really came up with something that you could wrap your head around. It was taking all those words that we all use to define executive presence, and they prioritized them and grouped them into 3 areas that they call dimensions. And if you look on the screen, the first dimension is character. Those are your leadership behaviors that really get people to trust you. They're often formed in childhood, and on a continuum, they're a little harder to coach to. They're truly ingrained in people. The second dimension is substance, and that is really around your credibility, how credible people find you in your jobs. This area is really formed throughout your career. It's easier to coach to. Then the third dimension is this area of style. I consider that leadership communication. And sometimes it's the easiest for us to coach to for our clients, because a lot of times the client just doesn't have the awareness around it. It wasn't part of their education or their training as they were coming up through their careers. Bates took all of this research, came up with these dimensions, and then they created an actual 360 style assessment, which is even more helpful for us as coaches. Here's what the assessment looks like. It is conducted online. It's a survey. It takes about 20 minutes for the raters to complete. So it's easy, but it's also very robust. Most of the assessments for my clients end up being anywhere from 42 to 55 pages long. It includes data, so there's actual numbers quantified, as well as some open-ended comments. So you've got a really nice balanced 360 to work with your client. I want to just make it clear here that the Bates, this EXPI, it's an Executive Presence Index, the EXPI, is very different from a personality assessment such as the Myers-Briggs, which really tells you who you are as a leader, how you perform as a leader. This is really all about perception, how you are being perceived by other people. So let me just check in, and Lisa, if you just keep an eye if anybody has any questions, you can certainly get more information about it online. But their work, Bates' work, really gave me two things that I appreciate. Oh, before I go through, I just wanted to show you, I forgot. I put this in here just in case you're wondering what the data points look like. There are 90 items on this assessment that go through those 3 dimensions. And what you see here is just one of the 90. This one happens to be under the substance category. It's around composure. And this is from one of my clients very recently. I love this because the way that they present the information, you and your client and their manager are transparent. So you can see how aligned you and your manager or supervisor are on this. And then everybody else, all the other raters that your clients pick, are grouped together, so they're anonymous. But in this particular example, you can see that my client rated herself pretty low on this. It's a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being you strongly disagree with that comment for the person. 5, you strongly agree. 3 in the middle is you neither agree nor disagree. So she rated herself pretty low on her composure, this piece, whereas everybody else sees her more composed. And that's great. It's good for her to know this is considered a happy blind spot. But you can also see with the rater bar, the black bar in there, that her direct reports have her down at a possible disagree. That's completely appropriate because you express, you vent with the people that you're closest to. But it's good to see, for example, that in the stakeholders, which in my client's index, these are senior stakeholders, so a skip level or 2 above her level, that they do see her as pretty composed for the most part. So in addition, that's the data piece. What Bates really gave me,
Jeanne?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you? I just have a question.
Sure.
From one of our attendees. They wanted to know, how does this index differ from the Hogan Leadership Profile?
Yes, I am not as familiar with the Hogan Leadership Profile, but what I see this being is a snapshot in time that can easily be changed. If you think about, for sake of argument, a politician, they know how quickly perceptions can change, even with the slightest little change in behavior. So if you were to do this assessment in month 1, if you did it again in month 3, and you took some proactive steps, you could see change in this pretty quickly.
Okay.
But there are others who are probably more familiar with Hogan than I am.
One of our attendees responded that the Hogan is a self-assessment, where this is more of a 360. So maybe that also answers the question. Another question is, what is the cost of one assessment? Or is that information that we can get at the end?
You can absolutely get that from Bates, and they have sliding scales. So if you were to bring a bunch of them into an organization, you would pay a lower rate than if you were just doing one. Okay. And I can get you, I'll give you my email address at the end, and I'll put you in, I'll give you the name of somebody to get in touch with from Bates who can give you the most current and reliable information on that.
Okay. One last question before we move on. I don't know if you are familiar with the Leadership Circle profile?
I am not.
Okay. All right. So then we can discuss that offline. Thank you.
Okay. So all of this to say that what I really got from this whole Bates assessment is two things I use all the time. One is this definition of executive presence, because it just puts a stake in the ground as to what executive presence is. What I love about this definition in particular is that it talks about moving people to action. And if you are working with senior level leaders, executives like I am, people who are in the C-suite or just one level below, it's beyond just implementation. It is truly getting larger and larger groups of people to take some type of unified action toward the greater goals. That's the first thing it gave me. The second thing it gives me is this tremendous model that I can now share with my clients to really break down what executive presence means to them or for them. So they, as a result of doing this index, the assessment, they will get ratings on all 15 of these are called facets, but they're leadership behaviors. So you can take a look and see the 5 that are under that trust or character area, the credibility area, there's 5 of them, and then there's 5 under the style area. So this model just really, once I share it with my clients, they get it. And I don't have to do a lot of selling around why we are together in a particular engagement. So how do we know when our clients really need coaching around executive presence? Let me introduce you to the inflection point. This is Bates' version of a challenge development curve. I'm sure it's familiar to a lot of you, maybe in different shapes or forms. But how I use it with my clients, I share this with almost all of them, and again, they get it. So for example, I'm working with a scientist, and this scientist has been in a clinical lab. They've taken drugs to trial. They've spoken before the FDA. They're becoming more and more successful. They're moving higher and higher up in their career, but they're very comfortable in that lab type of environment. So if they're starting out in their career, every step higher is adaptive development, meaning it's adding on to a base that they're already familiar with. But as they get promoted, they rise in an organization, they hit what's called the inflection point. It's B on this chart right there in the center. And what it says is, well, to quote Marshall Goldsmith, what it says is, what got you here won't get you there. Because now it's not adaptive change. It's not all, if you're an engineer, it's not all the engineering advancements. It's not all the medical advancements. Now it's really more about leading teams of people who may or may not be scientists or medical people or engineers. So how do you continue to influence, be influential with those people? The clients that I work with really feel, they're starting to feel that inflection point because they've been so productive and effective, and now all of a sudden they're not as effective and they're getting frustrated and they don't really understand what the problem is. The problem is they now need the tools for adaptive change. It's not just adding on to things they're already familiar with. These are things that skills, tools, strategies that are a little bit different than what they're comfortable with or what they're familiar with. Now, all of you being coaches are probably working with people who are facing some type of inflection point. So what is your client experiencing when they reach that point? Take a look. These are just some warning signs. This is what you may be told either from the talent development leader, the HR business partner, whoever brought the engagement into being. If you have a very self-aware client, they may express these themselves. I often share this with my clients, this list, and I just say, which, if any, do you identify with? And then they come right out and tell me, it makes sense to them. I'd love to hear from you as you review this list. What do you see in your clients, or what do they share with you specifically that may indicate that they need some coaching around executive presence? And while you're thinking about that, please go ahead and put it in chat, or I think you have to use the question box. And Lisa, if you could just let me know when you get any responses. But I'll just give you a specific example from my own world. The third bullet says a myopic point of view. The specific example of this is if I'm working with somebody who's a scientist and they are presenting into the C-suite. They go in with a presentation, they'll practice with me, but I hear right away that they're framing the whole thing as if they're talking to other scientists, or that they're trying to make everybody in the executive suite scientists. And these people, they don't want to be scientists. That's why they hired my client. So it's really to help them understand that they need to take what they know as the credible scientist and share it in a way that helps the people in the audience. That's when you know you have a client who's got a myopic point of view.
I have some responses. Some people have noted frustration showing in their clients, their clients not getting a desired promotion, the imposter syndrome. Yeah, and point of view, someone wrote point of view for sure, since I coach many on how to understand business and finance. The need to be the smartest person in the world,
Yes.
and too technical. Yeah. And
yeah.
And often I see feedback providers calling out the emotional responses more readily than the client. Feeling personally assaulted.
I'm sorry, Lisa.
I'm sorry. It says, often I see feedback providers are calling out the emotional responses more readily than the client.
Yes, because there's the disparity between how they think and feel that they're coming across versus how they really are coming across. And that's exactly why this EXPI, it paints the picture using data and words to let them know that you might think one thing, but if you really want to be influential, if you want to be effective, you have to align and get everybody else to be perceiving you in that way as well.
Right. One last thing, somebody wrote that feeling personally assaulted when there's a pushback on ideas.
Yes, we are going to address several of those as we move ahead. Time being what it is, we can't address all of them, but let me leave this by saying that you could take this and share it with your clients to kind of drill down and get them to prioritize where their executive presence gaps may be, and that will just help you, give you something concrete to work with them on. Okay, and I will come back to some of what you shared. This takes us to part 2, the second part of the agenda. And it's really just, I want to share some common needs that I see across the board and just give you a couple of the quick tips that I share with my clients, and perhaps you could use them with your own. I need to say, especially since this is being recorded, this is not based on anything scientific at all. This is my anecdotal finding that I'm sharing with you based on, I would say I've done close to 50 EXPIs over the last 5 years since I got certified in this. Without a doubt, the ones that are often rated the lowest are the 2 under the substance or credibility category, practical wisdom and composure. Practical wisdom is being the engineer, the medical person, the scientist who is unable to share information with other people in a way that is useful to the other people, because they stay stuck in their comfort zone, which is what they know. That's the science or the medicine or the engineering or the technology. Composure is something, I mean, it's always been a common one. It comes up as a lower rating, but after the last 2.5 years, it comes up more than ever. And it's just that people, they're feeling stressed. They're adapting to new, now it's hybrid ways of working. Well, a few months ago, it was just virtual ways of working. But their tempers are shorter. People's attention spans are shorter. Leaders are becoming frustrated, even with their closest team members. So composure is a big one. And then always, I have from the beginning, stays the same now, is under the style category, is the assertiveness leadership behavior. And the assertiveness is, if you think of it on a continuum, you're either passive or aggressive. Assertiveness is that sweet spot in the middle. It's where you are able to take challenging conversations and move the ball forward. Do something productive with a meeting that might be going a little out of control. Let me share with you a couple of quick tips around these 3 areas. This, what you see on the screen, is Bates' definition of practical wisdom. And rather than read it to you, let me just give you a few seconds to just read it yourself. I think the important part of this definition is that people, your client, is able to share information that helps other people make a decision or get to the heart of whatever it is that you're discussing so that you can move forward. Here's my quick tip. There are many ways to do this. You could just Google it and come up with a million. This is my own acronym, WHO. But what I say to my clients is, before you go into that meeting to speak, you have got to think about your topic from their point of view, not from your point of view. That is very challenging for analytically minded people to do. It's not easy. My acronym WHO, it could take them 5 minutes, it could take them 5 days. It just depends how much research they have to do, but you can do it pretty quickly usually, especially if it's an internal group and you know people. The W stands for who are they exactly? They have names, titles, roles, responsibilities. The H is I have my client think about, how are these people motivated by my topic? What are their pain points? What are their challenges? How can I help mitigate, reduce, alleviate any of those? What are the questions that they're likely to ask me? And the O is, what's their opinion? What is the hardest question in the room? What objections are they going to have to what I'm sharing or what I'm proposing that we do? Just going through this, and honestly, I do it even before a high stakes phone call. I'll just really run through who I'm talking to, what I want to share with them, and what's going on in their world. The minute you do that, you really will feel a shift in your thinking. And often my clients, without further pushing from me, because pushing doesn't really work very well, they get to it on their own. They're like, you know what? They really don't care how the study went with this patient. What they really want to know is, what is the dose that's working the best? And then they start to just on their own reframe their messaging in a way that makes it easier for the audience to really get what they need out of it. So I could go on all day about this. I won't, but it's a pretty quick one. Who? Just get them to think about their audience's agenda. Let me give you a moment to read the composure definition from Bates. I was working with one of my clients last week, and he described to me a meeting that went completely off the rails. And as it was very high level people who shouting just really went out of control. And he described it as a snowball. He said 2 people at the very top got into a little bit of an argument, and then other people started chiming in, and that snowball, as it rolled down the hill, just got bigger and started rolling over everybody, and everyone got swept up in it. And that is often what happens unless there is somebody in the room who is able to bring a sense of calm to that discussion or to that meeting. It can be really challenging to do depending on the personality, whether your client is an introvert. It's easier, a little bit easier if they're an extrovert. But here is my favorite quick tip for stopping the snowball from growing. As coaches, you probably all have used some version of needing to pause, whether you're coaching for interview skills, coaching for communication skills, getting people ready for presentations. Coaches, probably more than any other group of professionals, understand how powerful the pause is. It has so many benefits. But pausing just simply means stopping to take a breath. Bates has a way of describing it in terms of putting space between the stimulus and the response. If your client is running the meeting and a challenge, something breaks out, starts to get a little crazy, they really need to, it's the 3rd bullet on my slide, to think about being responsive rather than reactive. People who just jump right in are often reacting. They're not stopping to be responsive. So in real time, in your clients' real lives, it depends what their level is, if they called the meeting, what kind of position of authority they have. But what kind of time can they put between the stimulus, what got it stirred up, and any response? Can they call the meeting and we'll all get back another time? If people are back in person, can you step out of the room, grab a drink of water, just compose yourself, come back in the room? Sometimes none of those things are possible, and it's simply stopping to take a breath, to collect your thoughts, and then be responsive rather than reactive. The other tip on here that I share, especially if the conversation is getting heated, is to be brief. The more you say, the more it is just going to create drama. Pause, get a thought so you're responsive, not reactive, and be as brief as you possibly can. If you can just stop that snowball for a moment, you will change the tenor. Your clients will be able to change the tenor of that meeting. Let me share with you one of my favorite examples that I have my clients do to understand some aspects of the power of the pause. Before the meeting began, Lisa and Jess were so kind as to volunteer to be my guinea pigs and do this activity with me. What I'd like to do is have them read some information to you 2 different ways. And Jess, are you speaking first or Lisa? Jess?
I'm speaking first.
I believe it is you. I would like everybody else, except Lisa and Jess, to turn away. Just don't look at the next slide that I put up. I'll give you a moment to look at it when we're done, but let me just have Jess read this slide to you. There you go, Jess.
So, some people argue that filler words serve like an important purpose, like making a speaker sound more natural or like real, right? And so, in fact, Michael Erard wrote like a book on this very subject. And so just because filler words are like, fairly common in everyday speech does not mean that they are useful, right? So actually, in fact, they often detract from the listener's ability to like understand a particular message.
Thank you, Jess. Very well done. You can all look back. I just want you to know that Jess does not normally speak in a fast run-on sentence, nor does she use that many filler words. I'm almost positive. I force-fed them to her. All right. Because this is a listening exercise at this point, I'd like you all to look away again, except for Lisa. I'm going to have her read this slide to you.
Some people argue that filler words serve an important purpose, such as making a speaker sound more natural or real. In fact, Michael Erard wrote a book on this very subject. He found just because filler words are fairly common in everyday speech does not mean that they are useful. In fact, they often detract from the listener's ability to understand a particular message.
Thank you, Lisa. Very well done. From the listener's perspective, I would love to hear from you. I think you have to use that question box again. What did you experience as the listener? What was the power of the pause between those 2 readings? I'll give you a moment. And Lisa, as they come in, if you would please share them with me.
Yeah, one of our attendees said, "Arg, the Toastmaster and me just went a little crazy." One person said, "I could feel/hear the intent of the speaker." I guess another person said there was time to digest the message. So that's the second version. There was greater focus. The first one sounded much less mature. Mm-hmm. And there was far lower blood pressure and judgment in the second reading. And the second one sounded more confident and credible.
Yes. Can you read the one just before the last one about reducing the blood pressure?
Oh yeah, far lower blood pressure and judgment in the second reading.
Yes. All of those are the power of the pause. When we are talking about composure, the point I really want to make here is that even a second of breathing in, it was probably even less than a second, was enough to reduce blood pressure, just to make you feel like, as the listener, that somebody was in control. If you have your clients think about or debrief with you what took place in that meeting that kind of went awry, it's just people talking over each other. Nobody's listening to anybody else. There's just no sense of calm. If somebody can speak just by taking a breath between their sentences, it will have a great effect for the whole group to calm everybody down. It's a start. And to stop that snowball, sometimes all you need is that start. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that. Let me move into the third lowest rating that I wanted to address. Assertiveness is in that dimension of leadership communication or style. The others that are in this category, the appearance, being inclusive, being interactive, those can really, just a couple of quick, easy things can move the needle on that, how people perceive you. Assertiveness is the trickiest one in this group. And here, I'll give you a moment just to look at Bates' definition of it. And it's really talking about how do you take differences of opinion and make that discussion productive? Or how do you just share a controversial opinion or thought without shutting everybody else down? You are all probably familiar, there's lots of books, Crucial Conversations, Conversational Intelligence, Fierce Conversations is another one. You could just Google them and get the authors. But they all offer tips around how you manage these types of challenging conversations. But here's what I often share with my clients. It's that continuum that I shared a little bit earlier, going from the passive to aggressive scale. You don't really always use the passive to aggressive language. But what you see when your client rates lower on the EXPI in this assertiveness area, they are either an introvert, they have an introvert type personality, and they would rather leave the conversation than participate in it. I define that more as having an avoidance nature. Sometimes your clients, it's just a cultural difference. I work with a lot of Asian clients, and in that culture, it's extremely disrespectful and rude to jump into a conversation like that. And they often find it very challenging to do that. On the other end of the spectrum, I have a lot of clients who rate very high in this area. They get all 5s and they're like, Jeanne, look, I got all 5s on this, and they're so happy. But it's a danger, it's an overstrength. It means, I would never say that they're aggressive, although sometimes some of them are. They're just more competitive in nature. These are your clients who say to themselves, I am going to prove myself right at all costs. And then what are the costs? You need to take a look at that. But what I say, depending on who I'm working with, what the personality style is, what you're aiming for is this spot in the middle. You want to come across as collaborative. You can't be collaborative if you're taking yourself out of the conversation. You can't be collaborative if you're domineering and dominating the conversation. So once they get a sense of what they're aiming for or where the real effective part is, we've come a long way on the awareness end. And then I just give a couple of tips. For those who are more introverted or less likely to speak up and stop that snowball, I say shift your mindset. You're not being rude. You're not jumping in to be rude or add to this drama. You think about how can you be helpful. You're not going to be helpful leaving the meeting, and you can't leave the meeting if you're the team leader. So how can you help the situation? And you are all probably very familiar with the strategy of just asking questions. Brene Brown made a mini cottage industry out of the whole get curious thing. For a reason, it works. So if you can coach your client to be the person who interjects with a question that just help me understand where each of you is coming from, just by asking the question, you break the momentum of the snowball. Even for that brief moment, it gives the other two or however many parties are involved, it gives them a moment to just pause and breathe while your client is asking their question or getting curious. If your client falls at the other end of the spectrum, I do work with them on this responding versus reacting, because that's what they do. They just react. They jump in, probably talk over other people. So I work with them on that pause so they see what it feels like. I have them read those slides out loud so they feel the difference, the ones that Lisa and Jess just read to you, so that they can feel the difference. They feel their own blood pressure just kind of reducing. The other thing I have them do is track their triggers. And I have developed a reflection sheet that I use with my clients, and I'd be very happy to share it with you after the program, where it just gets them to stop after any high stakes meeting or conversation where things got a little challenging or unproductive. And I have them reflect in writing on what did their body feel like when it was getting to that point. Did they start shaking? Did they get heated? Is their heart racing, or their mind is racing? I just have them jot these things down. Then really, what are they thinking when that's happening? So where is their mind going when somebody else is sharing a opposite opinion? If they track their triggers for as little as 2 weeks, then they bring it into coaching. We talk about it. Once they understand what their body and their mind is doing, they can get ahead of it. And they will find that over time, and I've seen this happen and I know it to be true, they're not going to change their personality necessarily, but they are going to manage those moments a little more effectively and a little more productively. So those are the 3 leadership behaviors that I see come in lower, rated lower across the board. Those were a couple of quick tips. If I think back to what you said on that, how do you know when your client really needs to be coached around executive presence? I think I hit some of what you shared earlier when you typed it in. But if I didn't, and you have a specific question around the practical wisdom, the composure, or this assertiveness area, I'd love to address it right now. Let me know.
Thank you, Jeanne. We don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
If you would like, you can share the slide with your contact information on it.
So let me do that. I mean, and we'll open it up to any questions that you have at all. I'd love to connect with all of you. I'm on LinkedIn, Jeanne W. Rice. If you are interested in a copy of the trigger reflection sheet that I use with my clients, I'm happy to email it to you. Just reach out on email. For all of your specific questions around the Bates Executive Presence Index, that assessment tool, the best contact for you is Walter Jackson, and he's at walter.jackson@bts.com. And as I mentioned, Bates has merged with BTS over a couple of months ago. My wish for all of you is that you are able to take away 1 or 2 tips that I shared today and use them with your own clients to help them be more effective and raise their level of executive presence pretty quickly.
Okay, well, everybody is thanking you, and they all appreciate the updates and you sharing your knowledge and expertise. They were saying that's very insightful. So since we don't have any questions at this time, we are going to, just FYI for everybody attending the call, we are going to be sharing the recording and the presentation with you. And again, as Jeanne said, she can send you the questionnaire that she has. And we will we will send that out in the next day or two. And from that point, I'm sorry, Tracy Duberman would like to speak. And so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Yep. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa. You did an amazing job facilitating. And Jeanne, thank you for bringing this very interesting topic, one that most of us as coaches face with our clients at some point in time, to your colleagues, other faculty members of TLD Group. I just wanted to mention that it's interesting. I know, Jeanne, for us, for some of our coaching clients, we have executive coaches that are working over an extended period of time, let's say a 6-month engagement with a leader. And that oftentimes coaches can bring you and the Bates assessment in as an assessment technique to use as part of their coaching, not to take the place of, but to add on to the coaching assessment if there is a specific issue that is aligned to executive presence. So I just wanted to make sure that your colleagues, other TLD Group faculty and coaches are aware of that. So thank you again for sharing your contact information, and we'll be sending out a recording, as Lisa mentioned, but also your contact information as well. And most importantly, for all of us at TLD Group, we constantly want to improve. So please take a moment to answer the post-webinar survey, and most importantly, take the time to complete the faculty intake form. I cannot stress it enough. Given our growth, we are going to be using it as a mechanism to sort our incredible cadre of faculty. Yes, and this is part of a growth, our growth, and we need for you to have to pay attention to it, because we want to be able to utilize you. So thank you so much. Nice job. Thank you, Jeanne.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you again, Jeanne. And we look forward to our next community of practice with everyone. All right. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you.